my fondest dream is that gold goes to zero, which means everything else works. If my gold becomes $10,000, oh, we're in bad shape because gold is
your insurance policy.
It's my insurance policy, but gold at that price means everything else is falling down around our heads. So, I know there's a lot of people who want gold to go up, but gold not reacting tells me the world hadn't come to an end, and I don't want that.
Hey everybody, welcome to the What is Money Show. I am thrilled to have you here joining me on my mission to help shine light on the corruption of money. Now, if this is your first time listening to the What is Money Show, I strongly recommend that you go back to episodes 1 through 9 first, which lays a lot of the groundwork for many of the concepts that we explore on the show. These first 9 episodes are my series with Michael Saylor, and thousands of people have told me that this is the best podcast series they've ever heard, hands down, and that it was instrumental to their understanding of money and Bitcoin. So if you're looking to start a deep dive into the nature of money, I don't think there's any place better that you can start other than episode 1 of this show. Now, a little bit about this show and how it makes money. The What is Money Show is 100% sponsor based. So all of our revenues are derived from direct sponsorships. And I strive to be very selective about the sponsors that I work with, specifically only using sponsors that I use personally, and also choosing sponsors that have values which are well aligned to the values expressed on this show, such as freedom, education, self-sovereignty, etc. So what I'm going to do now is a few ad reads right at the top of the show, and then I'll do a few more ad reads in the middle. And I hope you'll take the time to listen to them, as again, these are hand-selected sponsors, and I think you'll like what they have to offer.
Today's podcast is brought to you by In Wolf's Clothing. Wolf is the first startup accelerator dedicated exclusively to the Bitcoin Lightning Network. 4 times per year, Wolf brings teams from around the world to New York City to work with like-minded entrepreneurs, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with Bitcoin and Lightning. The program is designed to help early-stage companies achieve product-market fit, develop their brand, secure early-stage funding, and grow businesses that help fuel the global adoption of Bitcoin. So go to wolfnyc.com to learn more about the program or apply. Again, that's Wolf NYC, WOLFNYC.com.
John Mauldin, welcome to the What is Money Show.
Robert, it's good to be here. We're going to have a lot of fun today.
I hope so, and I think so. You are a very interesting man. Just by way of quick introduction, you are an economist, an author, and the founder of Mauldin Economics.
That is correct. And the father of 8 kids.
8 kids. Wow, I did not know that.
By 5 different women.
Wow. Quite the virile man you are.
Well, that's not kind of the case. It sounds more fun. We adopted 5 and my wife had 1. So I had, okay, so I wasn't there at the beginning.
Okay.
So, but I had.
You got me.
I got 2 black sons, 2 Asian daughters, a blonde brunette and a redhead.
Wow.
And a Choctaw Indian.
Wow. Quite the clan you've got.
Quite
there.
the clan.
Wow. What is the age range?
46 to 24.
Wow. Good for you, man.
Yeah.
Hats off, honestly. Like, I've always thought...
Well, that's why I'm losing my hair back there.
I have 1 daughter.
Right.
Natural daughter. I want to have as many kids as I can. And if I can't have any more, then I would probably do something similar. I'd like to adopt. I think it's really valuable that when people do that.
It has been... I will tell you that 7 or 8 is too many, but and at any one given time, I've got 2 that I'll trade you. It's just never the same 2 at the same time. they kind of rotate in and out.
So,
but it's an absolute blast.
Yeah.
And now I've got 8 grandkids. But the interesting mix of my family, because they grew up in a multicultural family.
Right.
So now I only have 1 Caucasian grandkid.
Really?
The rest of them are mixed something.
Wow.
So it's a very colorful family when we get together.
That sounds like a beautiful family. Well, congratulations, sir. That is a great life you've created there, a great legacy you've created there. Okay, sorry, you got me distracted on family stuff now. I want to get on that rabbit hole. We've only got 40-ish minutes here today. So let's talk about you. You are a brilliant man. You've been in economics for a long time. You are currently writing a weekly letter?
I write a weekly letter. I've been writing it for 24 years.
Yeah.
Called Thoughts from the Front Line. The readers can get it simply by going to just Google John Mauldin, Mauldin, and it'll come up, Thoughts from the Front Line. Stick your email address in. You're one of my 1 million closest friends then.
Awesome. Wow, 1 million. That's huge.
Well, that's the old days, but that's the catchphrase.
Yeah.
I've written 8 books, so I've kind of made my bones around the whole macroeconomic world.
Yeah. Got it. So let's talk about the letter you wrote. You said you wrote one today, right?
Oh, one this morning. It'll be out tomorrow morning.
Okay. Can we, since it's fresh on your mind, let's talk about what you're writing about today.
Well, it's going to be part of a 3-part series because we're talking about inflation and why the Fed is going to be challenged, because we wake up this week and inflation's 3% and everybody does what humans being do. They give us a linear projection. So if inflation has been going down, then everybody projects it. It's like you. When you get 3 big checks in a row, you start projecting it into the future. And and if I do that, I'm going, oh my God, I'm going to be making $7 million a month in 10 years.
Right.
Look at this curve.
That linear extrapolation prone to.
But what happens is that inflation is not a month. You can get a monthly number, but the headline that we look at is a 12-month number.
Got it.
And so the current number is important, but the number from 12 months ago is also just as important. So if you look at what inflation was going to be for the next 6 months from last year, it's a much tougher base. So even if inflation was 0% for the next 6 months, which it won't be, it would still be at 2.7, 2.8% for the year. If we get a 2% inflation or 3% inflation, now you're looking at 3.7, maybe 4%. I mean, if you take what inflation was for the 3 years before COVID, it'll be 3.8%. If that low inflation that we think of, that's what we average. That's what we're trying to get back to.
Right.
So the Fed's going to be challenged. And the problem is part of that big down drop, if you remember, inflation got kicked because we went into Ukraine. Oil prices go to almost 120. And even though it's only a 7% factor plus other things, it doubles. So you got a 7% factor that's doubling. So you get a big boost in inflation from that. Well, when the price goes down, it pulled prices back in. What surprised me, wasn't on my bingo card, mortgage rates go to 7%, and housing prices are still going up. Okay, I mean, we're building more apartments, but the prices of apartments are coming down, but they're not deflating.
Right.
So let's say the Fed gets successful and rates start coming back down on the long-term side. That's going to make more people want to buy houses, not fewer. I mean, if they're buying at a 7% mortgage, they're really going to buy at a 5% mortgage. Right. So it's going to make it more difficult for the Fed to try to bring inflation down. They're going to be fighting. This is not a 2-month or 3-month fight.
Right.
We're going to be higher for longer than any of us would be happy with. That's just what's kind of baked into the cake. Because Powell has gotten religion. He doesn't want to be Arthur Burns. And for the readers out there going, who's Arthur Burns? He was the chairman during the 70s. And he kept, every time there'd be a new number, something would come up, he'd say, well, that's transitory. And we went from where we were to transitory to, mid-teens inflation with everything being transitory. And it took Volcker coming in saying, okay, I'm going to put the economy in 2 back-to-back recessions, because recessions are by definition deflationary.
Of course.
Okay, so I should say, I think inflation is going to be 3.7, 3.5, 3.6, somewhere in there at the end of the year. If we have a recession, this is the one caveat. If we actually have this recession we've been anticipating for years now, you actually have it, then inflation will go down. But waiting for this recession has been like watching paint dry. It's just been a long time.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of great points there. Do you think that this is a consequence of us being in kind of a late stage fiat currency paradigm where we saw this in the 70s a little bit, right? Stagflation, where economic growth is stymied, but inflation's going up. It seems like, as you said earlier, interest rates are going up, yet house prices are still going up.
Right.
So, and inflation is finally starting to come down, but it's taken a long time. So, to what extent does the current economic climate have to do with the rate at which we have expanded the money supply over the past few years? Because it has been an unprecedented expansion of M2. I think the numbers I've heard are like 40% out of every dollar that's ever existed has been produced in the past 3 years.
Something like that. But the inflation was basically driven by, in my opinion, the excess spending, the deficits on top of deficits, in the stimulus from COVID. Plus, we shut off supply, and then, we're shocked when demand comes back when you put extra money in people's hands. So, you get inflation. Our future challenge is going to be, we're now at a debt of almost $3 trillion. I mean, when Reagan was running
30 trillion, right?
30. It's 32 and pushing 33 now. I mean, when you're running $1.5 trillion, $2 trillion deficit, it starts adding up.
Right, and that's 140% of GDP,
something like that. Yeah, and now Japan runs a 230% debt to GDP, but they have no growth. And what we know, what Rogoff and Reinhardt, maybe more conservative economists will tell you, is that debt is a drag on growth. So we're going to get into this uncomfortable position in a few years where inflation's back down to under 2%. Yay. Well, unfortunately, we're not going to be happy because GDP growth is going to be in 1%. I mean, when I first said in early 2000 that we'll be lucky to do 2% growth for the entire decade of the aughts.
Yeah.
And everybody said, oh, you're so bearish. Turns out I was an optimist. It was 1.9%. And same thing for the last decade. I said again, we'll do 2%. That's right where we were. I think we're going to do 1% this decade. And because we're going into this overburdened debt, and that's eventually going to cause a crisis.
Right.
But that's a story for the next interview.
Well, it's a good point though, right? There are limits to indebtedness. At some point, the debt service cost starts to inhibit your ability to have economic growth. It's like putting a heavier and heavier ball and chain on the economy, something like that.
Well, I mean, we're getting to the point now where I think we are at it, where the interest on the debt is more than defense spending.
Right, and more than I've heard. I think it starts to exceed government revenues. So where they have to actually print money to pay the interest on existing debt.
And when you get to that place,
it's hyperinflation stage 1.
Well, no, it doesn't become hyperinflation. It becomes it could be. I mean, they could do that, but I think more than likely the bond market will throw up. And I wrote about 6 weeks ago that what we're in fact going to have is a crisis in the late 20s. And it's only in the middle of a severe crisis, not a mild crisis. I'm talking, we're not, nobody's happy crisis,
right,
that people will be willing to sit around and compromise. I mean, you would have never gotten the compromises you had in 2008.
Right.
Okay, without
pain.
Without, oh my God, we're all going to die. We're going to have to do something different.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to that again, and we will resolve it. We will muddle through. World won't end, but it'll be bumpy because no solution to too much debt, too much spending, not enough revenue is easy.
Right.
Because in one case, people are going to say we need to tax more, and we probably will have to increase taxes, but it won't be income taxes. It'll probably be something like a value-added tax.
Right.
And we're going to have to cut spending in places that we don't want to cut. I mean, I get and I've written about this, so I can say it in public. I get $50,000 a year from Social Security. That's up from 42 years ago because just the inflation increased it.
Right.
They should means test in Social Security. It's not an entitlement. I paid into it, but the reality, it's just a welfare program. It's good that we have it. That it's a safety net program that's important. So I'm not demeaning at all. But then, in a country where we can't meet our budget, we're going to have to means test thing. We're going to have to means test Medicare. All of those compromises that nobody's willing to do now. When they're offering you a blindfold and your last cigarette, then you start thinking about compromises, and that's where we'll be. So it'll be very important who's going to be in control of those compromises. It would actually be probably best if we had a split executive Congress, because the last time we balanced the budget was we had a Republican Congress with Gingrich, and Clinton was the president, and they were able to come to a compromise. You get a Republican-controlled Congress and White House under Bush. Guess what? We went from running surpluses to running debt. It got worse under Obama. Trump never cut anything. Biden's worse. It just makes you want to sigh, but that's what we're...
Well, it's easy to spend money that's not yours, right?
Yeah.
I always go back to what Nietzsche said, that everything the state has is a lie, everything the state has is stolen. So very easy to not be a responsible fiduciary when you've stolen the money from the taxpayers in the first place. So I'm not surprised in the least.
Now I'd like to tell you about our sponsor, iCoin Technology. iCoin has just released a sleek new hardware wallet. Looks like a mini iPhone, a little touch screen and camera on it. The device has no Wi-Fi, no cellular connection, no GPS. It's a strictly physically cold hardware wallet. Like I said, it's got a high-res 3-inch touch screen. It's got a camera for air gapping the wallet. It's got optional Bluetooth compatibility. And it's really a brand new UI, UX experience for a hardware wallet, making it very accessible, easy to use, not intimidating. And as we always talk about on this show, the only way you can truly own your Bitcoin is by having it in self-custody. So you need a device like iCoin Wallet to truly own your Bitcoin. Go to iCointechnology.com today and use promo code Bitcoin23 for 30% off of this new sleek hardware wallet.
Now I'd like to tell you about our sponsor, the Gold Investment Letter. The Gold Investment Letter helps sophisticated investors navigate capital markets and maximize their profits in trading gold, silver, and mining stocks. The Gold Investment Letter seeks out the most undervalued companies and identifies special situations in the mining sector, and then provides in-depth analysis on both their financial positions and future prospects. The Gold Investment Letter explores many complex domains, such as investor psychology, portfolio management, and macroeconomic trends, all with the goal of making you a better investor. The Gold Investment Letter offers a free version and a paid premium version, and I strongly recommend you at least sign up for the free version, because after having read a few of these issues, I can promise you it is a treasure trove of good information. You can sign up for the free newsletter today at goldinvestmentletter.com.
I have to ask you a question.
You can ask me three.
And it is the most important question on this show.
Okay.
John, what is money?
I'm part of the George Gilder fan club, I guess. I think, and he writes persuasively, especially in his last book, Life After Capitalism, time is money. And
is money also time?
Yes, the way it works out. We think of money as our gold or our dollars or our credit cards or whatever, but the reality is time reflects the value of money. Time reflects the value of service. You work, you build up this thing we call money because you spent time making that money.
Yes.
Whether it's hourly wages or profits from your business or profits from your investment, it represents a certain time value.
Yes.
And that time translates into your ability to buy stuff, to save stuff. But it's the best explanation of it is to go to Gilder's books. If he wrote a very famous book in '82 called Wealth and Poverty, Reagan's most quoted book. Then he wrote Knowledge and Power here about 5-6 years ago. Very, very important. But he summarized it. I always said he put too much stuff in Knowledge and Power, and he agrees. We had dinner last night. Someday I want to be 83 years old and as in shape as he is. He and his wife were still out on the dance floor, BB King's.
Wow.
When we left, us young guys just couldn't.
He's in his 80s.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
And he just won a world half marathon championship for his class. So I mean, that's what I want to be in shape. I want to be in his shape now, let alone when I'm 83. Yeah.
So may I ask you?
Go ahead.
A question. And I actually believe that as well. Like I've described money as time as money in a lot of my writing. Mm-hmm. Now, if we're using that description of money, doesn't that mean that a central bank that can produce new units of currency ad infinitum out of thin air, and they can externalize the costs of that, they're diluting the savings of savers, right? Aren't they effectively stealing time from savers if they're stealing purchasing power by expanding the currency supply?
Roughly, you're correct. Now, the reality is they could grow the money supply at nominal GDP. Okay?
Right.
Okay. 3, 4, 5%, whatever.
You'd still be stealing that growth.
No,
right?
because the country itself, the GDP itself is growing, and you actually have to have some lubricant, and you got to have some oil.
Mm-hmm.
Money serves that lubricant function. If you had a flat, static supply, that would mean
the purchasing power of savers is going up.
The purchasing power of savers absolutely would go up under that. But a gold standard is almost by definition deflationary.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it would be nice. We'll never see one. And you were talking about, central banks always do. You can have low inflation and a central bank actually, modestly printing money, like Switzerland.
Yeah.
Sweden's figured out, Norway's figured out how to control their inflation with much smaller economies than the U.S. does. So in our particular case, we've got 12 people sitting around a table trying to decide the price of the most important thing in the world, which is the interest rates on the dollar.
Of course.
And rather than just saying, what is the market going to do? I don't think there are not a lot of people that believe that the market would be pushing rates up to 5.5%, soon to be 6% by the end of the year.
Sure.
In and of itself.
It's a consequence of central planning and the money.
Well, it's a consequence of they waited too damn long to, increase the prices because they were looking at a backward 12-month lag. And now they're looking at the same 12-month-old data. And so they go in and say, well, we're data dependent, whatever that is. And no, let's look at some real world stuff.
Yeah.
But that's not what they do. I mean, you understand the Federal Reserve is handicapped. They really are. They have 500 PhD economists, and that's about as big a handicap as you can have. Because, they've got all this data. They have everything that I write and all this analysis.
Yeah.
And they still come up with, they're behind the curve constantly.
Well, of course, because they're a non-market institution, right? When in Soviet Russia, when they tried to plan the prices of nails rather than letting the market determine it, they couldn't do it in a way that allocated the capital effectively. So they started looking across the pond at us to see what the price of nails was. So I guess my question is, what purpose does the central planning of money serve? It doesn't seem like it helps anyone other than the shareholders of the central bank. It hurts the common man and society. So why do we have central banking? Is it not just a giant scam?
No. You actually need a central bank to provide there was a gentleman in the 1880s that they founded The Economist magazine, and his name was Walter Bagehot. It's spelled Bagehot, but the British pronounce it Bagehot. And he said that the purpose of a central bank in a crisis is to provide capital, liquidity, to the system against good assets at a high price. So when Morgan and the others, went to Jekyll Island and created the Fed, they had just come through we'd been through 3 or 4 major panics and a bunch of minor panics for the last 40, 50 years, and they were tired of that. Now, never in their minds did we have something like the Federal Reserve today. They were just wanting somebody to backstop banks, which frankly we have. The banks are like the blood veins. It's how the blood goes through our body.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that they should be setting the price of money. That doesn't mean that they should be worry about unemployment. All they should be worrying about is keeping the value of that money stable. That should be their number one goal, and then getting out of the way. Their only real role to me is providing liquidity in a crisis. So 2008, 2009, yeah, you needed a central bank. 2011, 2012, if they'd have gotten out of the way, would have come back a lot faster, I think.
Yeah. So
and maybe that's counterintuitive to what people say, but believe me, if you go back and read about the panics, 73, 1907, some of the others, you're happy to have a central bank when we have those moments. But other than that, I wish I wish nobody cared about what the Federal Reserve does, and we didn't wait on the next minute.
Yeah.
I mean, when a Federal Reserve member becomes a rock star, something's wrong with your economy.
Gotcha. If the primary role of the central bank is to maintain the purchasing power stability of the currency,
it should be, yes.
Should be. Yet we have seen the dollar depreciate over 99% in the past 100 years since post-inception of the Federal Reserve in 1913. What does that say about the effectiveness of our implementation of central banking?
What it says is that not so much in the 20s and 30s, but then later, they decided that a little inflation is good because it helps borrowers, and the government became a borrower.
There you go. It helps the government, which is the biggest borrower.
So a
little bit of theft to offset my borrowing cost is a good thing for me, the biggest borrower in the room.
I argue that 2% inflation is too much, because 2% inflation says that you're going to lose half your purchasing power in 36 years, and 3% inflation, you're going to lose half your purchasing power in 24 years. So you can make a theoretical argument, and we can argue all day long about what it should be, but the Fed is absolutely terrified of deflation. I mean, when you're appointed to the Fed, they take you in a back room, they do a DNA change, and you now are completely on board with fighting deflation. That's their bugaboo.
Right.
They shouldn't worry about it. I mean, we don't care that the price of electronics go down. I don't care that my TV's cheaper, I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
What's gone up is the price of things the government subsidizes, like housing, healthcare, student loans in colleges. Those things go up in value. Or up in price, rather.
Right. What is the difference between expanding the currency supply, what they do inside of the Federal Reserve, versus someone on the street producing a counterfeit U.S. dollar bill? What's the difference?
Well, legally one's counterfeit, but is
there an economic difference? I realize there's a legal difference. And we can point the guns out and say, you guys can't do it, we can. But economically, is there any difference?
Yes. And it starts to become a distinction without a lot of difference. But there is. I mean, in my particular view, now that we've got AI, we could probably just say, let's determine that what we want the money supply to expand at. And in my view, nominal GDP is fine because it as long as the economy's growing, then if the money supply grows in tandem with it, you're not gonna have inflation at
you won't have price inflation, but you also won't have that purchasing power accreting to savers. So they're losing purchasing power gains they would have otherwise received.
Okay, and so if you can get the votes, then you can say we want inflation to be zero, and then we'll set our computer to zero.
Do we get to vote for that though? I don't think we get to vote for who's inside the Fed.
You'd have to vote for a president who's going to be committed to sound money, and we haven't had one of those. I mean, Steve Forbes ran, but I mean, they couldn't even let Judy Shelton onto the board. The one lady that might have said, argued for sound money and a gold standard, they wouldn't even let one possible dissenting vote. Thank you, Mitt Romney. To get on the board. I mean, at least she would have made it a little bit more lively. But they don't allow dissent anymore. And Powell goes out of his way to make sure that nobody dissents. They won't be through raising rates until you start getting split votes. 2 or 3 FOMC members saying, no, we've gone far enough. When that starts happening, and we haven't gotten anywhere close to that. There's pretty much unanimity. They're going to raise rates again here in 3 weeks, and I think they're going to do it once more before the end of the year. Now, it's almost like they're going to keep raising rates until they break something. And when you break something, you get a recession. Then, unfortunately, you get unemployment. You get all the negative side effects, but inflation will come down. They can cut rates. They think they can handle a recession easier than they can handle inflation. Probably true, but I would prefer them not handling it at all.
Now I'd like to tell you about our sponsor, Wasabi Wallet. With Wasabi Wallet, you can receive, send, and store Bitcoin privately. In Wasabi Wallet, your transaction history and wallet balance are completely hidden. Wasabi Wallet is easy to use. All of its privacy features are built in by default, and it works with any amount of Bitcoin. Wasabi users can make CoinJoin transactions together with BTC Pay server users or Trezor Suite users. For BTC Pay server users, they can make payments directly inside of a CoinJoin, and for Trezor Suite users, you can make CoinJoins directly on a hardware wallet. These features result in fee savings and security improvements for both sets of users. So go to wasabiwallet.io today to download the state-of-the-art Bitcoin privacy wallet. Now I'd like to tell you about our sponsor, Casa. Casa makes it simple to buy and secure your Bitcoin without wondering whether you're doing it right. Specifically, Casa provides a multi-key custody solution, which is by far the most secure way to custody your Bitcoin. Now, when I talk about Bitcoin being theft-proof money or inviolable private property, a multi-key custody model is exactly what I am talking about. Using multiple keys lets you maintain full control of your Bitcoin while also giving you redundancy in case you lose one of the keys. It's also the best way to secure your Bitcoin for inheritance planning purposes. So go to keys.casa, that's C-A-S-A, today to sign up and use discount code BREEDLOVE.
So I've described, I say inflation is legal counterfeiting. Counterfeiting is
Correct.
Criminal inflation. So
that's a good line. I'm going to steal that.
it's all yours. It's all yours. What would the world look like if we could somehow disband these currency counterfeiting cartels we call central banks? Would the world be better off? Would the world be worse off? I mean, I have a strong view that it's just organized crime. We need to get rid of it. You've said at least there's some purpose or function to the central bank. Is it a net benefit or a net detriment for the human race?
Every country has their own currency. So you've got to have some mechanism for that currency to be moved back and forth, to be handled on reserves.
Every country has its own currency because it has its own central bank. If we didn't have central banks, we might just all be using gold.
Well, that's true, but you're asking what should be versus what will be.
We're asking hypothetically, if we did have a gold standard, let's say, would it be net benefit or net detriment for human beings?
If you could get everybody in the world to agree, then yes. But the answer is you won't get that. We keep hearing this story. Russia's going to create a gold-backed currency. And I hope so, because nothing will destroy Russia faster, because they make their currency actually convertible. Everybody will hit it, and they'll start going through their gold. You have to remember that Nixon had to close the gold window because de Gaulle said, "I don't trust you guys anymore. Here are my dollars. I want your gold." And the French kept hitting the gold window, taking gold from Fort Knox and the Fed. And Nixon had to say, "That's all the pain we can handle."
Yeah,
and that's what would happen in the future. So understand, I've got gold sitting in a vault that I bought a long time ago, and it's gone up in value percentage-wise with my portfolio. But I don't think of gold as an investment, and it actually has been a comparatively lousy investment, even though I'm
savings, right?
Times, I consider gold to be central bank insurance. Okay, my fondest dream is that gold goes to zero, which means everything else works. If my gold becomes $10,000, we're in bad shape, because
Gotcha.
Gold
It's your insurance policy.
It's my insurance policy, but gold at that price means everything else is falling down around our heads. So, I know there's a lot of people who want gold to go up, but gold not reacting tells me the world hadn't come to an end, and I don't want that. I would like my grandkids to inherit these funny round gold things and play checkers with them. That means the world has really turned out well.
Okay. Well, I agree with that, actually, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Well,
I think when you have a central bank that can print currency, it just corrupts everything above it, and we see the world getting worse and worse.
Well, I just described to you my fantasy land.
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
that was my science fiction book.
Right.
That's not anything that I'm telling you is going to happen.
So in reality, you would think that your gold's going to be much more precious.
I am afraid that my gold is going to be more valuable. Yes.
Okay. Where does Bitcoin fit into your worldview?
Bitcoin is the first step. Satoshi or whoever, when they created it, was looking at gold and said, "I want to create something like gold that's kind of a finite number." Well, we've already lost 20% of our Bitcoin. So technically there's 20 or 21 trillion Bitcoin out there. 5 million of them, we don't know where they are. They've gone. The poor guy that I read about's got $1 billion of Bitcoin and he can't find his
can't find his keys.
That's just that's a shrinking monetary supply. That's by definition deflationary. Now, it's a great trading vehicle. If you're a trader, it's wonderful. There again, if you had, and I just had this conversation with George Gilder last night. He thinks a cryptocurrency that's decentralized, it can't be centralized. It's got to be decentralized, and it's got to be some mechanism for steady but costly growth, because time does have to be money. That energy translate, you have to spend something to create that value, and it needs to be an increasing spend. But so I really think we'll go to a digital currency. I don't think we're going to see a U.S. central bank digital currency. You've got some people begging for it, but Treasury right now and the Fed will say not no, but hell no. I really don't want our central bank creating a digital currency. I think that's the end of freedom, because I don't want to be China where they can see everything in my wallet.
Of course.
And let alone have cameras over my shoulder.
Yeah, it's very dystopian if they can see everything you do and turn off your money when they don't like what you do.
Well, and that's why, you're a little young to remember, you weren't even born, but the Chinese were buying, the Japanese were buying everything, and they were going to own the world, and we were all going to be speaking Japanese. Well, they ran their debt up to a monumental number, and it all collapsed in 89, and they still haven't come back. And they've had 0% inflation, 0% growth for 33 years now.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to become Japan either. 0% growth's a bitch if you've got kids and young, because you need that growth so they have the opportunity that I had. I mean, I lived in a very, very lucky period from 82 to today, where we're growing and there's opportunities there. I want my children to have that same opportunity.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Definitely, to have an expanding economy offers you a lot of prospects as you're growing up in the world. And I guess my hope is that Bitcoin's monetization holds central banks in check, reduces the amount of theft that they're inflicting on productive market actors by both giving people recourse to a money that's not inflatable and a form of money that can that can circumvent capital controls. So people get more free. People that are more free tend to become more productive and prosperous, and hopefully that would open up these economic possibilities that you're describing for future generations.
By the way, I thoroughly believe that we will have a digital currency in 10, 15, 20 years. I'm not arguing against Bitcoin. I just think it's going to have to take a different form. I mean, if you think about it, Bitcoin hadn't been around all that long.
14 years.
14 years. So we're still trying. It's still the first inning. We're still trying to figure out how all this works.
Top of the first inning, if we're talking in terms of gold, right? Gold's been money for 5,000 years. So, but things move a lot faster in the digital age.
Well, so we may not need 5,000 years. Maybe we need 25 years. Yeah. But I am a very optimistic person. I'm optimistic on the human experience, on the human experiment. Technology is doing amazing things. I'm a huge fan of biotech. I mean, you're young enough, you're going to live for a very, very, very long time, because we're that close to being able to hold aging and reverse it.
Interesting.
And so, and with the other things we're doing in technology, I'm really optimistic. It's governments that I'm bearish on.
As am I, very bearish on governments. And I do hope to live a long time, but as I think it was Jim Morrison said, the future's uncertain and the end is always near. So we've got to just enjoy the ride. Okay, I've kept you probably long enough, good sir, but one last question. You said you recently moved from Texas to Puerto Rico.
Yes.
What incited that change, and how has it been?
Well, we moved almost 5 years ago, and part of it was my wife and I were just ready to do something different. We were looking around, but Puerto Rico has a tax treaty. It's actually this IRS Rule 663. So you can move to Puerto Rico and you pay the Puerto Rican government 4% of your income that's non-U.S. source. So if you can source it in Puerto Rico, which a lot of people can, I mean, you could easily move to Puerto Rico. You're going to pay 4% tax on that income as opposed to 40 plus state taxes. And there's no capital gains. There's no dividend taxes on dividends or interest. I mean, it's really nice. It's a paradise. We should have moved there for the lifestyle. And the taxes are good. I couldn't blow my wife out of there with dynamite now.
Oh, she loves it, huh?
She loves it. I mean, we're sitting in a great community, wonderful, deep people and neighbors. You're 5 minutes from the beach, 5 minutes from all the clubs, 10 minutes from your Walgreens and CVS and doctors. It's a very pleasant way to spend your life.
So you went there for the tax treatment, stayed for the paradise.
Stayed for the paradise.
Nice. Well, that's lovely to hear. John, thank you so much for doing this.
Robert, it's been awesome. We got to do this more often.
Well, I'm happy to do it. Always good to talk economics, especially with a man of your stature.
Thank you.
Where can people find you on the internet?
Well, just Google John Mauldin, Mauldin. You'll find Mauldin Economics. Click on Thoughts from the Front Line. Stick your email address in. It's free. You're one of my, million closest friends. And I show up in your inbox every Saturday morning.
Sounds easy enough. John, thank you again. This is a great conversation.
Great.
Thanks for doing it.
Fun.
All right.